All right, good afternoon. I will call to order this meeting on May 16th of the Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District Board of Directors. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Director Williams? Director Hartman?
Here.
Director Nelson? Director Lavanino? Director Silva?
Here.
Director Clark? Director Perotti?
Here.
Director Julian?
Here.
Director Cordova?
Here.
Thank you. Director Rouse?
Here.
Director Patino? Director Infante? And Chair Capps.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Excellent, we have a quorum. So first item is closed session. Will the clerk please read it into the record?
Chair Capps, the second item is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, we forgot the pledge, of course. Let's do that. Please join me in pledging allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, now we're ready for closed session. Clerk, if you could please read the item.
Closed session, item C1, conference with labor negotiators, Government Code Section 54957-6A, unrepresented employee, air pollution control officer, agency designated representative, Jennifer Richardson, District Counsel. Closed session, item C2, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, paragraph 2 of subdivision D of Government Code Section 54956-9. Significant exposure to civil litigation, one case, based on these facts and circumstances. The Environmental Democracy Project has provided to the district a draft petition for writ of mandate and a complaint for injunctive and declaratory relief related to the district's mandatory duties under the Air Toxics Hotspots Information and Assessment Act of 1987. In that draft petition and complaint, the Environmental Democracy Project states that the district has violated and continues to violate its legal obligation under the Hotspots Act.
Thank you. So we will resume into closed session. We will now reconvene after closed session. Ms. Richardson, will you please provide a readout?
Madam Chair, the board considered 2 items in closed session today: conference with labor negotiators for the unrepresented employee position of air pollution control officer with myself as the designated representative, and also conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. The board took no reportable actions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Richardson. So now we're moving on to approval of minutes. Are there any discussion or public comment? Discussion first on the minutes from our last meeting, which is in March. Seeing none. Any public comment?
Chair Capps, we did not receive any public comment on the minutes.
Okay, I need a motion and a second, please.
Move approval of the March 21st minutes?
I'll second that.
Okay. Clerk, if we could please have a roll call since we're in different places.
Director Williams?
Aye.
Director Hartman?
Aye.
Director Silva?
Aye.
Director Parodi?
Aye.
Director Julian?
Aye.
Director Cordova?
Aye.
Director Rouse?
Aye.
Director Patino?
Aye.
And Chair Capps.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thanks. And now we need approval of the administrative items. Does any board members wish to pull any admin items? May I pull E6? You bet. Okay, is that it? Any other administrative items?
Chair Capps, members of the board staff would like to pull E7.
Okay, so E6 and A7, let's just vote on the remainder of those first, and if there are any public comment on the remainder of the administrative items.
We did not receive any public comment on the balance of the admin items.
Okay, so let's have a motion, a second for the remainder of the administrative
So
items.
move. Alice?
Thank you. Will the clerk please take a roll call vote?
Director Williams?
Aye.
Director Hartman?
Aye.
Director Silva?
Aye.
Director Parodi?
Aye.
Director Julian?
Aye.
Director Cordova?
Aye.
Director Rouse?
Aye.
Director Patino?
Aye.
And Chair Capps.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, now we'll address E6, please. Clerk, if you could read that into the record.
Administrative item E6, salary merit increase for Air Pollution Control Officer Erin Arlen Janae. Approve a 1 to 3% salary merit increase for Air Pollution Control Officer Erin Arlen Janae.
Director Hartman.
I just wanted to say that the entire board expressed appreciation for your exceptional service, and others will say some things about it, but you've had to preside over a declining budget and agency, and you've done it with keeping really great staff and high morale, very responsive to the board, and very effective agency, and we all feel we're really lucky to have you.
Any other directors? Director Parodi.
Well, I'd like to echo what Director Hartman just said. And, you know, I always think of you as this leader that leads a team, and you're lean and you're mean, and you have a fantastic team, and it comes from you. And I appreciate all the work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Williams.
I just want to thank you for not only your nuts and bolts management of the team, but your participation in community efforts, your understanding of the issues, and your belief in addressing air quality issues in a meaningful way. There's no substitute for commitment.
Excellent. Any others? Oh, Director Rouse.
Yeah, and just once again to echo my colleagues, the discussion, and especially as we deal with various executives in various realms of our little world that we have, you've remained in the highest level of praise and appreciation by the board you serve.
Excellent. Anybody in Santa Maria, just making sure.
Well, I think it's pretty much all been said,
Yes.
but thank you so much, Ms. Janae. It's been great. It's been much easier sailing for all of us.
I concur. So I think we just need to vote on that.
Madam Chair, upon a motion that includes the percent of a merit increase, then I have an announcement and then vote.
Okay. So I need a motion that includes the 2%.
So moved.
Second?
The 2% COLA and 2% merit.
And I'll second that, Brody.
And just to clarify, today is just the merit increase
Okay,
for 2%? Okay.
we're square.
A first and a second. So the motion before the board is to approve a merit increase of 2%. California Government Code Section 54953 requires that the legislative body orally report a summary of any recommendation for final action on the salary of the local agency executive. A 2% merit increase results in an annual salary of $242,930. Thank you. It's ready to be voted on.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Now we just, the clerk, roll call vote, please.
Director Williams?
Aye.
Director Hartman?
Aye.
Director Silva?
Aye.
Director Parodi?
Aye.
Director Julian?
Aye.
Director Cordova?
Aye.
Director Rouse?
Aye.
Director Patino?
Aye.
And Chair Capps.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Excellent. Now we'll go on to the second pulled item, which is E7, pulled by staff.
Administrative item E7, execute the third lease amendment for the office space located at 260 North San Antonio Road, Suite A, Santa Barbara, California. Authorize the chair to sign the third lease amendment between the Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District and the Santa Barbara County for the purpose of reducing the amount of office space leased from the county to accommodate County General Services Department needing more space to move the rest of the department into the building. And at this point, we have not received a final agreement. Staff recommends we continue this item to your June board meeting.
Okay, any discussion on that? Looks like we're good. Any public comment?
We received no public comment on this item.
Excellent. Just need a motion and a second.
Move we continue to June?
Thank you.
Second.
Second. All right, roll call vote, please.
Director Hartman, excuse me, I'm sorry. Director Williams,
Aye.
Director Hartman,
Aye.
Director Silva,
Aye.
Director Parodi,
Aye.
Director Julian,
Aye.
Director Cordova,
Aye.
Director Rouse,
Aye.
Director Patino,
Aye.
and Chair Capps. Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thanks all. We're now moved to item F, which is the director's report. Ms. Arlen Janae, would you please give the report to the board?
Definitely. First off, I want to recognize the approval of Rule 210 and the administrative agenda. That is a huge lift for our agency. It represents a significant amount of time and dedication and research and analysis and community engagement from my staff over the last 2 years. It also showed a lot of commitment with the Community Advisory Council. We met with them 3 separate times and worked through a solution, and from the local stakeholders as well. And most importantly, your board, that you had the dedication to ensure modifications to that rule were made to ensure we have fiscal stability moving forward. So I want to thank you and congratulate you for that effort. The next item, I have a PowerPoint presentation, just 2 slides. The first one is on EPA. They recently made some changes to their particulate matter 2.5 standard.
EPA. I don't remember that one.
Oh, you don't have that
I
slide?
don't have that one. I just have the.
Ah,
one.
darn. Okay, I'm going to talk about the EPA standard. They updated the PM 2.5 standard. This is particulate matter, also known as soot or fine particulate. They did this on February 7th of 2024. They lowered it from 12 microns per cubic meter down to 9. These standards define the maximum amount of pollutant that could be present in the air for it to be considered healthy to breathe. This is their annual standard, and just so you're aware, particulate matter 2.5, it has both long-term and short-term health impacts, not only your lungs, but also your cardiovascular system. And attainment designations for this new standard are expected to take place in February of 2026. They will be based on a 3-year monitoring data, so 22, 23, and 24. Our region is anticipated to be in attainment with that standard. Currently, our design value is 7.5. But we don't know until 2024 is over how the ultimate designation will land. But so far, we're looking good, which is great for all of us. They also have updated their air quality index. That's the color-coded chart that indicates if it's green is good, yellow's moderate, orange unhealthy for sensitive groups. And with that change, what it will likely mean is they modified the concentrations for good and moderate. So what the end result will be is we'll likely have more days through our area that will be represented with a yellow color, a moderate color. It's not meaning that our air quality is getting worse. It's meaning that our knowledge of the health impacts associated with particulate matters at those levels have more impact than what we originally knew with the old standard. So changes to the orange and red category are not expected to happen, but when we are impacted by wildfire smoke, we'll likely see colors in the purple area. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention because every year we do our annual air quality report and we demonstrate how many good days we have, and we'll probably see a reduced number of good days because of the particulate matter 2.5 attainment change, or not attainment, standard change is what I meant. All right, so now to the slide. I want to share some good news. I saw it there for a second, so I know we have it. Okay, there we go. Our office in North County is underway. The construction is underway. We are making progress, and the top row of photos here, you can see what our building looked like. This is at 1011 McCoy, and what our building looked like when we met with our contractors. It was pretty much 100% demolished. And then the photos on the bottom, those are just 2 weeks later. You can see that the construction build-out is already occurring. We meet with them, JG Contracting, every 2 weeks to monitor the progress and also cast the net out for 3 weeks to see how what milestones we have to meet. So I wanted to include in the bottom right image there, that's the vision. That's where we're going in the long run. And in communications with our contractor, the end of this year, we'll be able to move into our new home in North County. All right, that's it. And what I'll do on the PM 2.5, I think it would be good to show the slide. Maybe I'll have it circulated to the board. I think it would be helpful so you could see the difference. It compared the values, the old standard versus the new with the air quality index chart. That concludes the director's report.
Thank you very much. Are there any public comment on the director's report?
Chair Capps, members of the board, we did not receive any public comments on the director's report.
Okay. Thank you so much. Then we move to item G, which is public comment period for members of the public to speak on items that are not on the agenda. Do we have any requests to speak?
Chair Capps, we do have one request to speak, Amanda Clark with Coastal Blooms. Also, written materials was submitted yesterday and have been distributed to the board.
Thank you. You can raise the whole podium if you'd like. There's a button on the side. It's kind of so that you don't have to bend over, lean over. Yeah.
You need to hit the button on the speaker. It'll be red.
And you have 3 minutes once you're set.
Hit it one more time. Yay.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Hello, Chair Capps and Board. Thank you for your time. My name is Amanda Clark. I am the compliance manager at Coastal Blooms Nursery, which operates cultivation, processing, packaging, manufacturing, and retail locations within Carpinteria and Goleta. I'm here to respectfully request the board to direct staff to reevaluate the cannabis permitting program. In August of 2023, APCD reinterpreted their permitting rules and sent out an updated cannabis advisory to clarify that they would be requiring permits for all post-harvest cannabis processing operations, odor control, without opportunity for public input or board discussion. This came as a surprise to processing operations in the Santa Barbara County's coastal zone, who had been working with the county and community on odor abatement for the past 6 years through the Cannabis Land Use Ordinance and Licensing Program. As a result of this work, the county requires robust odor abatement plans certified by a professional engineer or industrial hygienist that is approved during the land use permitting process and inspected and enforced on during the project's life. Project CDPs, including OAPs, were reviewed by APCD as part of their oversight of each land use permit application submitted to the county. Many operators received comments from APCD's review, including their various APCD permit requirements, but none of the comments required permits for processing activities. However, with the new advisory, operators with OAPs are now being permitted twice on the same technology, which could cause any advancement in technology or SOP changes to be delayed. Additionally, any conflicting enforcement, permit conditions, or rules that result from the double permitting will cause confusion amongst all parties. If both programs are to continue existing in tandem, effective collaboration between the two governing agencies is essential for them to successfully mitigate air contaminants. The district could provide operators that have approved OAPs from other governing agencies with waivers to eliminate permitting redundancy and allow both agencies to work off one OAP, which would prevent duplicate permitting and allow both agencies to enforce on the same already approved OAP. We hope that given this information, your board can direct APCD staff to work with the planning department and reevaluate their cannabis permitting program requirements to create a program that is easier for everyone involved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, yeah, Director Hartman.
So this item isn't agendized for discussion today, but I wonder if it would be possible to ask our executive officer to meet with people and see what we can do to have a tighter, more integrated process with county planning.
Yes, I have a few comments if I could. But yes, we definitely could meet with county. The district is mandated by California Health and Safety Code to regulate stationary sources of air pollution. And our regulatory authority applies to odors and other air contaminants discharged from post-harvest cannabis operations. Since the district issued our revised advisory in July 2023, we have met with county P&D 4 separate times and on our efforts to regulate and enforce. We will definitely continue working with county and any other lead agency on a regular basis to further our coordination efforts on the cannabis industry.
Yeah, Director Hartman.
So I just want to be on the record. I really support APCD as a regulatory agency being involved, and thank you for this and coordinating with the county. I just wonder if you would meet with the people who spoke today and just get their sense about how it might work for them in a more efficient way.
Yeah, we have met with Coastal Bloom, and we can definitely follow up with a separate meeting with this proposed approach. I'm not familiar with it. I haven't, flushed out. We just received their comments yesterday, but we can meet with them and get a better understanding of exactly how they envision a streamlined process that doesn't jeopardize our regulatory authority in this front.
Director Williams.
Yeah, I definitely think that APCD has a role, but I think it particularly important when we're talking about extraction, volatile and non-volatile extraction. I mean, the regulatory mandate that we have must have some judgment in it if most APCDs are not, regulating post-harvest storage, distribution, and packaging, and I was kind of surprised at what are these people doing here, when we're already, venturing into the messy but important world of making sure that extraction facilities are adhering to clean air rules. It seems like a very big thing to start getting beyond that when the county has been working on odor abatement programs for now 6 years or 5 years. I mean, it would be somewhat counterproductive if the county and the APCD were at cross purposes at a staff level, is what I'm worried about.
Okay, since we're definitely not on the agenda, but thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, thanks. Next item is discussion item H1. Will the clerk please read that into the record?
Discussion item H1, fiscal year 2024-25 proposed budget. Consider the fiscal year 2024-25 proposed budget as follows. 1. Receive the proposed budget for fiscal year 2024-25. 2. Hold a public hearing to accept comments and provide direction to staff regarding changes desired by the board. And 3. Schedule a budget adoption hearing for June 20th, 2024.
Okay, Ms. Arlen Janae.
All right, good afternoon. I'm presenting today on the Air Pollution Control District's proposed budget for fiscal year 24-25, which runs through July 1, 2024 through June 30th, 2025. The image on this slide is the cover of the Air Pollution Control District's budget. It's a very useful document that includes much more than just our revenue and expenditure numbers. It's really our annual report. It summarizes air quality, trends, milestones, and accomplishments that we've reached over the current year, our performance metrics, and goals for next year. In this year's budget, we also included the district's long-range fiscal plan, since it was our guiding post for developing this year's budget. In this presentation, I will provide you with a high-level overview of our proposed budget. I have 7 slides only. But I have 7 slides, but only 6 is which I'll really be focusing on. And it takes me about 12 minutes. I'll try to work through it pretty good, but there's a lot to cover. Tina Aguilar, our Administrative Division Manager, is here to assist and answer any questions on nuts and bolts once we work through this presentation. As required by the California Health and Safety Code, this is the first of 2 hearings for your board's consideration of the proposed budget. As Lori mentioned, our next hearing is scheduled for June 20th for adoption consideration. A bit of background, we published our budget on March 29th and put that on our website. It was also circulated to all of our permit holders, over 800 local sources. We held a virtual workshop on April 16th, and today we have received no public comments on the proposed budget. Next slide, please. Each year, early in the calendar year, we start the budget process by calculating our revenues, programming out our revenues. Once those are forecasted, expenses, including salaries and benefits, are programmed to equal out the revenue, making it a balanced budget. The total budget for fiscal year 24-25 is $13.7 million. This is a decrease of 30% from our current budget of $5.8 million. Reduction of 30% sounds alarming, but it's only a reflection in the change we are allocating grant funds over the next 12 months to more accurately represent the amount of grant funds that will be expended during this 12-month window. The next slide provides more background information on the grant fund allocation change. Of the total budget, 3.8 is earmarked for pass-through grant funds. These are funds that we receive from the state to award to local projects that voluntarily reduce emissions from mobile sources primarily. The district cannot use these pass-through funds for our operational expenditures. To better illustrate the budget that falls within our purview to allocate for our operations, we remove the pass-through funds for a total of 9.9 in our operating expenditures. 9.9 is a 3% reduction in our current budget for fiscal year 23-24. We have no change to staffing, that's at 34 full-time equivalent, and my goal continues to be to build a balanced budget that avoids the use of strategic reserves for our ongoing cost. Next slide, please. These are major highlights, and the first main section here deals with the change in our allocation of grant pass-through funds. Historically, we presented a budget that allocated all the money that we have for pass-through funds in that current year. So that would be what new money might be coming in from the state, as well as monies that we've had over prior years that hadn't been expended yet. This includes projects like the Farmer Program, the Community Air Protection Program, Carl Moyer Program. However, with an increase in grant funding recently and the focus on zero-emission vehicle technologies and infrastructure projects, it's taking longer to actually get those projects up and running. It's taking longer for us to move the money that we receive out the door. So we took a deeper dive and evaluated how much are we actually able to spend each year. And when looking at that, what we found is we're only able to spend about 30% that's been budgeted, and the rest is carried on to the next year. So to better align the budget with actuals, this year's proposed budget reflects expenditures in the grant fund for what is likely to be paid out during this fiscal year. The remaining grant funds are moved to the fund balance and available for expenditures in future years. If our assumptions are incorrect and additional projects are brought to completion, district staff will bring back a budget adjustment request to your board to move funds out of the restricted fund balance account to pay for the projects. And that would be a good day. The next change here is on the fee revenues, which incorporates the changes to Rule 210 and also applies a consumer price index for fiscal year 24-25, which is 4.2%. Next slide. I'd now like to focus on operating revenue for the district. This table can be found on page 22 of the budget document. It compares the current budget with the proposed budget year for 24-25. At the top, you will see the total revenue for fiscal year 24-25. It's $13.7 million, which includes the pass-through grant funds. And in the middle section, that's the grants, that's the pass-through funds there. As I mentioned in the previous slide, you will see in the grant section, the change was made in the allocation of grant funds as an overall reduction of 60%. Majority of that is in the use of grant fund balance, illustrating once again what the district actually intends to use with this upcoming fiscal year. The section at the bottom of this table is the district's operating revenue at $9.9 million, a decrease of $300,000 or 3%. This is because the district is budgeting to use less fund balance in fiscal year 24-25. The use of operating fund balance is decreasing 74% or $1.5 million. In the current fiscal year, the district budgeted to use $2 million in fund balance to renovate the North County office. These renovations, as you've seen, have started, and we are estimating and planning to be complete come December. We do not anticipate using any more fund balance or savings on this project. I want to note that the district has a healthy fund balance, projected to be approximately $13 million. 78% of that is grant pass-through funds that have been encumbered for grant projects. Of the remaining 22%, or $2.8 million, 1.5 of that is set aside by the board as strategic reserve to be used during fiscal emergencies. Next month, we'll bring a fund balance policy to your board for consideration to memorialize parameters within the fund balance category. When looking at operating revenue without fund balance uses, there is actually a 15% increase, which is due to Rule 210 changes and the CPI increase. Now let's look at expenditures. The district's largest operating expenditure is our staff. Salaries and benefits make up 67% of our total operating budget. Salaries and benefits increased approximately 4% from the prior year, mainly due to the 2% COLA that has been previously negotiated. This is the last COLA negotiated with the employee bargaining units. Future union negotiations will begin later in fiscal year 24-25. Medical benefit costs increased substantially for district employees in 2024, approximately a 15% increase. Also included in the union negotiations was a 4% increase towards medical benefits, and that is slated to start January 2025. Lastly, the district saw an increase in our employer retirement contributions of $72,000, or 4.2% in retirement contribution line item. While on the subject of retirement contributions, I wanted to point out that of the $6.7 salary and benefits expense, approximately $1.8 million, or 27% of that, is attributed to retirement contributions. So pretty large amount. Services and supplies remain stable through fiscal year 24-25. Our administrative overhead costs are captured here. Total overhead costs to support district represents approximately 78% of the S&S category and includes utilities, rent, building maintenance, legal counsel fees, postage, office supplies. The district is seeing a decrease in our rent in Santa Barbara. When we relinquish that back to the county, and that will be brought back to you with the contract or agreement in June, that will save us approximately $28,000 a year. The savings, though, is being offset by an increase in our cost allocation charge that we pay the county for contracted services, such as for procurement, treasury, auditor, among other things. Fixed assets remain at an elevated level due to the ongoing remodel of the North County office building. With the projected completion date at the end of this calendar year, this will be the final year that we'll see increased fixed assets. Long-term, this office remodel in North County will have a savings for our rent at our Miller building now. Or Cook. Is it Cook? Cook and Miller, that's the intersection. Also in this category, the Compliance Division has budgeted to replace 2 aging vehicles with new electric vehicle or hybrid vehicles. And our monitoring section continues to replace analyzers and monitoring equipment for sites as needed to ensure that we stay up to date and use the best technology available. Based on the current budget before you today, revenues are projected to meet expenditures. Therefore, the district has a balanced budget. All right, this is the last slide with text on it. Then this is just a summary of our key goals going forward for 24-25. The first one there relates to the implementation of our long-range fiscal strategy, our cost recovery goal. We utilize Matrix Consulting to do our cost recovery analysis, but following that, we're going to build an in-house tool that we can use on a regular basis. Obviously, implementation of Rule 210 is a big focus for us. That will begin, and we'll be working with all of our forms, our database, and all of the sources on getting those changes in place. We have a permitted facilities map. We presented this to your board a number of years ago now. It's a very useful tool, but we're in the process of updating that and making it even more useful. It's a public-facing resource for folks. We are wanting to expand our bilingual team's efforts and to ensure we are better serving all of our divisions, but compliance in particular, with tools that they need when they're out in the field or on our webpage. Community air protection continues to be a large emphasis in our area as well as throughout the state, and ensuring that underserved communities are engaged with what we do, aware of what we do, and also able to participate in incentive programs. McCoy, it's only a half-year priority. In 2025, we won't have to have that as a priority anymore. We'll just be able to utilize it. And then the last item is a requirement from the EPA. We are in the process now of starting to update our 5-year air monitoring network assessment. That's taking a look at all of our monitors throughout the entire county and submitting that to EPA for approval. And that's just a snapshot. Obviously, we have our long list of core responsibilities that are something we're going to continue doing regularly. And that concludes our presentation. Both Tina and I are available for you if you have any questions.
Thanks for that concise presentation. Before I go to the board, any public comment on this item?
Chair Capps, members of the board, we did not receive any public comment on this item.
Okay. Any discussion or questions from the board? From our directors? Let's see, I can't see. I don't see, no lights on down here. And in Santa Maria?
Nothing here, thank you.
Is there any public comment in Santa Maria? Oh, there they are.
Any directors have any questions or discussion? Looks like you covered it all.
Yay.
Okay, then we just need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Grody.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please, to the clerk.
Director Williams?
Aye.
Director Hartman?
Aye.
Director Silva?
Aye.
Director Perotti?
Aye.
Director Julian?
Aye.
Director Julian, are you there?
Aye. Can't hear me? Aye.
He says, I see his thumb. Can we take that?
It's good.
Okay. Jenna, can we take that? Thank you. Director Cordova?
Aye.
Give us a thumbs up. I can hear her. Okay, good, I see it.
Thank you. Director,
I could hear Director Cordova, just for the record. Yeah.
Director Rouse is left. Director Patino?
Aye.
I heard her. And Chair Capps?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, we're almost done. We have, our next item is H2. Will the clerk please read that into the record?
Discussion item H2, 2023 Air Toxics Hotspots Program Annual Report. Receive and file the 2023 Air Toxics Hotspots Annual Report and associated presentation, during which district staff will present the report and discuss its contents and its significance.
All right, this afternoon, Charlotte Mountain will provide today's presentation. Ms. Mountain has been with the district for the past 9 years, and in addition to being a lead engineer in the district's toxic program, she's also providing training on performing health risk assessments to other air district staff throughout California. Please proceed.
There we go. Now it's on. Today I'll be presenting on the 2023 annual report for the AB 2588 Air Toxics Hotspots Program as required by the California Health and Safety Code. Next slide. So first, to establish some background on this report, Assembly Bill, or AB 2588, which was passed in 1987, is also known as the Air Toxics Hotspots Information and Assessment Act. This regulation requires businesses and industries throughout the state to first quantify and report their emissions of listed air toxics, assess the possible health risks from these emissions, and, if applicable, notify members of the public who are exposed to significant health risks attributable to their emissions. The regulation was modified in 1992 to require facilities to take steps to reduce any significant risk as well. An overview of this process is shown in the graphic on the left side of this slide. The entire infographic can be found on the webpage linked here. Air toxics are a category of air pollutants defined by the state. These are separate from criteria pollutants or greenhouse gases. Some examples of common air toxics are diesel particulate matter, perchloroethylene, and benzene. Air toxic pollutants have been determined to pose a potential health risk in humans. Next slide. So when I talk about health risk in the context of this presentation, I'm referring to the likelihood that exposure to quantified air toxic emissions will result in an adverse health effect in humans. Under AB 2588, health effects are determined for cancer impacts as well as non-cancer impacts. Calculated cancer risks are expressed as chances in a million. This is the added risk of developing cancer that results from lifetime continuous exposure to toxic pollutants from a source, beyond the background cancer risk that exists from any other environmental factors or genetic risk, for example. Calculated non-cancer risks are expressed as a hazard index, which is a ratio of the modeled concentration of a pollutant to what's known as its reference exposure level. A reference exposure level simply means the maximum concentration at which the state has determined there are no adverse health effects exposed to this particular pollutant. Meaning if the modeled concentration is equal to the reference exposure level, the hazard index is equal to 1.0, and no adverse health effects are expected. Non-cancer risks are analyzed for 3 different lengths of exposure. There's chronic, meaning 24/7 long-term exposure. Also 8-hour chronic, which is particularly relevant for worker exposure. And then acute, meaning a maximum 1-hour impact. In 1993, the district's board adopted our significant risk thresholds, which are the notification thresholds shown in the table on this slide. So those numbers are equal to or greater than 10 chances in a million for cancer risk, and a hazard index greater than 1.0 for non-cancer health impacts. These are the levels at which a facility is required to notify the public of any potential health risk created by their emissions. In 1998, the district's board set the risk reduction thresholds at the same levels, meaning any facility required to notify the public must also reduce their risk to below these thresholds. And I just want to note that these levels are consistent with most of the other air districts in the state. Next slide. So health risk values are calculated using a process called a health risk assessment. The first component of a health risk assessment involves quantifying air toxics in an emissions inventory. Under AB 2588, sources submit an air toxics emission inventory plan, which describes how they are going to calculate their air toxic emissions. This plan would include emission calculation equations, emission factors, control efficiencies, and any other parameters that go into these calculations. Then they submit an air toxic emission inventory report, which includes an Excel workbook with all of the emission calculations following the methodologies that we approved in their plan, like the example calculation sheet shown on the slide on the left here. These emission inventory submittals involve extensive review by the district for completeness. Next, the air dispersion modeling is conducted using a computer software program that incorporates parameters for all emitting sources, such as stack height, velocity, temperature, dimensions and locations of nearby buildings, terrain data, meteorological data, and so much more that goes into the model. The last step of the health risk assessment process combines the emission inventory and air dispersion modeling into another program that performs the risk analysis. User inputs include exposure durations, breathing rates, and information for pathways other than breathing in toxic air contaminants directly, such as absorption through the skin and ingestion from eating vegetables that pollution is deposited onto. Next slide. Facilities are prioritized under AB 2588 with the purpose of addressing the sources with the highest potential to cause a significant risk first before moving on to smaller facilities. Prioritization is based on a numerical score that is calculated for each source using board-approved procedures, based on the emission rate and toxicity of each pollutant emitted from the source, as well as its proximity to the public. Scores less than 1 are considered low priority and are not required to go through AB 2588. All high and intermediate priority facilities with a calculated score greater than 1 are required to submit health risk assessments, or HRAs. Next slide. Our district first started the AB 2588 process in the 1990s by prioritizing sources and assessing the health risks from each source, starting with the highest score. If the health risk results for a facility exceeded our board-approved significant health risk thresholds, then risk reduction and public notification were required. In 1991, 51 significant risk sources were identified in our county. As these sources began implementing risk reduction measures, by 2000, we had 6 significant risk sources remaining, mostly oil and gas facilities. By 2015, all sources had reduced their risk to below significant levels. But then the same year, the state updated their guidance on how to conduct HRAs. So next slide. This update required that all local air districts reevaluate facilities under AB 2588. Based on the available data, we calculated high priority scores for 71 facilities and intermediate priority scores for an additional 71 facilities in the county. We've begun reassessing these sources, starting with the highest scores. The steps in the process are displayed in the flow diagram on this slide. First, after we determine a source's high or intermediate priority, we notify them that an air toxic emission inventory plan, or ATEIP, is required, describing how they will calculate their emissions, like I mentioned earlier. After the ATEIP is approved, the source submits an air toxic emission inventory report, or ATEIR, quantifying the emissions according to the approved plan. After the ATEIR is approved, the source conducts the HRA and submits the results to us. As shown, there are 3 possible outcomes based on the results of the HRA. One path over on the left side of this diagram. If there are any risk results above a significant threshold, which again means a cancer risk greater than 10 in a million or a hazard index greater than 1.0, that means the facility needs to submit a risk reduction audit and plan, which details how they're going to reduce their risk below significant levels. In tandem with that, the public is notified of the risk results from the HRA because they are significant. Then after the facility reduces the risk, they are subject to quadrennial updates. So every 4 years, they submit a brief report on what has changed at their facility since the last update, so we can determine whether there is a concern that they may now pose a significant health risk. And then we'll need to go through the process again to get updated health risk assessment results. On the second path towards the middle of this diagram, if the risk results are less than significant, but either the cancer risk is greater than 1 in a million or a hazard index is greater than 0.1, the facility is also subject to quadrennial updates. And then the third outcome on the right side of the slide, if the cancer risk is less than 1 in a million and all hazard indices are less than 0.1, the facility is exempt from AB 2588. These are the sources in Santa Barbara County that were actively worked on in the AB 2588 program in 2023. During that year, we provided comments on Santa Maria Landfill's ATEIP. We conditionally approved Lompoc Landfill's ATEIP. We approved UCSB's ATEIP and ATEIR. We conditionally approved Vandenberg's ATEIR and provided comments on their HRA. And we began review of Lockheed Martin's HRA. Although we did not provide any formal comment letter to PCEC in 2023, we did give some preliminary feedback regarding their HRA. As there have been significant changes at this facility with the company acquiring new leases, the quadrennial update process would result in a revised HRA being required soon. So to streamline the process, we are working with the source to update their AB 2588 submittals to a newer inventory year. Note that there is more detailed information on the entire AB 2588 program in the report that was filed with the board, and there are several other facilities with ATEIP submittals into us that we have not been able to review yet. Due to the complexity of these facilities and our limited resources, we can only handle a few of these in a calendar year. Next slide. State guidelines allow local air districts to utilize air toxics analyses conducted as part of our permitting process in lieu of requiring separate quantification of air toxics to satisfy the requirements of AB 2588. In 2015, for consistency with the new state guidance, the district completely revamped our modeling guidelines for health risk assessments. This ensures that all analyses conducted under permitting new source review and CEQA review will satisfy the requirements of AB 2588. The majority of the district's toxics work occurs under permitting NSR and CEQA to ensure that no new significant risk facilities are created. So, for example, if a proposed project results in a significant health risk, we work with the source to make changes to the project or refine the assessment before the permit is issued. This results in an HRA showing less than significant risk levels and negates the need for the source to go through the full AB 2588 process. NSR and CEQA review occur much more quickly than AB 2588 and require fewer staff hours. 37 HRAs were approved by the district in 2023 under NSR and CEQA, preventing new significant risk facilities from being created. And since the updated state guidelines were published in 2015, the district has worked to streamline our toxics review process. We publish new air toxic emission inventory plan and report guidelines, which include modeling protocol tables. We have created and continue to update our approved air toxic emission factors database and associated document as new data comes out. Additionally, substantial updates have been made to the district's HRA guidelines to address unique situations as well as more common errors in submitted HRAs. Having this guidance document increases the quality of submittals for the AB 2588 program and Toxics NSR and decreases the amount of time spent by staff to answer basic questions. Also, the district has developed 2 screening tools for the following commonly permitted sources: diesel engines and contaminated soil vapor extraction systems. The graphic on the right side of this slide shows the user interface for the diesel engine screening tool. These tools use health conservative assumptions to assess the risk with minimal staff resources. Next slide. So to briefly summarize this presentation, AB 2588 addresses health risk from existing sources by requiring air toxic emissions reporting, health risk assessments, public notification, and risk reduction. The district's robust NSR and CEQA review programs prevent the creation of any new significant risk sources. For efficiency, the district has implemented tools to streamline these processes. However, due to the complexity of these analyses and limited staff hours to dedicate to the program, reassessment under AB 2588 will be occurring on a long time scale. With more resources, we could work more quickly to reduce health risks to the members of our community, directly fulfilling our agency's mission to protect public health. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation. We'll go first just to double check to see if we have any public comment.
We did not receive any public comment on this item.
Okay, any discussion or questions by the board? Director Hartman.
This is a lot to assimilate, and I gather staff had to pull all this together in a heroic Herculean effort. So congratulations. I'm still assimilating a lot of it, but was particularly interested in Vandenberg Space Force Base, and there's defense and then there's private space launches. Just wondered how you approached each of them, and how that then fits within no new significant risk sources are to be approved.
Yeah, Vandenberg is a very interesting source. So we assess risk under AB 2588 using the same stationary source definition that we use for permitting. So Vandenberg would include all of the, government operations out there. And then there are other facilities like United Launch Alliance or SpaceX, and those are all separate stationary sources. So those get evaluated on a stationary source basis.
And what are you finding?
I do not have that information in front of me, but I could definitely get that to you at a later date.
And one thing to note, especially now with SpaceX, and they have a proposal before, or an application actually before our agent to increase the cadence of launches there.
They're
Right, but that, I just wanted to let the board know, as it relates to NSR and CEQA, both of those paths give us an opportunity to go in and do some evaluation, not only of criteria pollutants, but also of the toxics. And then we have HRAs that are being conducted for those. They are compared back to the thresholds that Charlotte presented earlier, too.
And so I have a lot of constituents who are asking me, what's raining down on me from these space launches. So anything you can give me to help answer that would be most appreciated.
I can follow up with the information we have on the proposed projects.
Thank you.
Dr. Silva.
Hi there. I just had a couple questions. One was, in referencing especially with the risk type and the notification thresholds, is there a longitudinal time frame within that? I wasn't sure. Is that like in perpetuity on an annual basis? Because if it's 10 per a million for like notification threshold for cancer, I'm assuming, diagnosis to identification, what is the time frame that would qualify for 10 per million within that?
So that is a continuous lifetime exposure. So it's saying over the entire course of your life, an increase of 10 chances of getting cancer in a million or greater is where that level is set as defined as significant.
Okay, and that would be for all cases, so through chronic non-cancer, 8-hour chronic non-cancer, and acute non-cancer?
So chronic is, chronic is long-term, and then acute is a maximum 1-hour impact. So that's actually an impact if someone was basically standing in the same place for an hour. We evaluate what the impact from emissions being dispersed right to that exact point for 1 hour, if that is above significant. So that is not a lifetime risk.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I apologize for having you define some of these things.
Oh,
and then
no
the
problem.
Other question I had was, you mentioned about how with AB 2588 that there are more or possibly greater investigations, but it's highly labor intensive, so you have limited staff resources. Is that something you could speak to of how many cases you would be able to investigate that you're unable to do at this time? Is there a queue that don't have the means to approach?
Right, so as I mentioned on one of the slides, we have 71 high priority facilities and an additional 71 intermediate priority facilities. So all of those sources need to go through the AB 2588 process. All of those have been assessed as having the potential to cause a significant risk, or the potential that we're concerned about the risk from those sources. It doesn't mean that all of those sources are causing a significant risk and we're going to have to notify the public on every single one of them. But those are the numbers of the facilities that are on our list that, yes, we need to get to these, but we have to go one at a time. And so we start with the ones that we expect to have the most impact first, which are, of course, the most complex facilities like Vandenberg, like UCSB, and so those take even longer than a regular one would.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Just let me check in Santa Maria if there's any questions or comments.
None here. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask too, also on sort of the cancer causing, if you could just give a couple examples. I'm not to call places out, but it just made me maybe curious of sort of a common
common threats out there that this is addressing?
Like a common, a facility in the county that is
No,
producing
more
risk,
just
or-
a product or a material, something that you're.
So a really common one are diesel engines, like emergency backup diesel engines. We have, hundreds, maybe thousands of those throughout the county. Diesel PM is quite a toxic pollutant, and so we evaluate every single one of those. Also, gas stations are a common one. There are a few volatile organic compounds that are listed as air toxics, and so those all have risk assessed from those as well.
Dry cleaners.
Sure.
But PERC has been removed from that process, right? So that was something that we learned about, the use of PERC in dry cleaners, and over the years, it's eventually been phased out. The benzene is at the gas station that's primarily driving the risk at gas stations.
Okay. And as an aside, on KCLU this morning, I heard that our congressman is authoring a legislation about the foam that firefighters use to
I
fight
heard
fires
that
at
too.
airports.
And that's, I think, more of a groundwater contamination
That's right,
issue.
groundwater. But anyway, so I just thought, yes, Director Prodi.
I just thought of a question when you talked about diesel engines. How, I've heard that there are quite a few school buses that are diesel.
Yes.
And I just learned that when they're starting them up in the morning before they go on their it's like about 15 minutes. And so if there's quite a few buses in a row warming their buses up for 15 minutes, that seems problematic to me. Is that something that would be looked at?
So because this program only assesses the stationary sources that we permit, things like, school buses, mobile sources are not evaluated.
But
The only time that something like that might be evaluated in an HRA that I've seen is under CEQA review for example, for trucking projects that we've had in the county. We do look at mobile diesel emissions from those, specifically under CEQA. Under our permitting, we don't have the regulatory authority to look at those emissions.
But the state does have programs that eliminates idling. It's applied to all heavy-duty diesel, including school buses. And then I'd also like to point out that that's part of our grant funding program, is to try to convert those diesel buses as quick as we can to electric. Because what they're finding is, even though it's a tailpipe emission going outside, the level of particulate matter from the diesel exhaust is higher inside than outside the bus.
Whoa. Whoa, that I did not know. Well, thank you for your report and all the work you put into it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Really interesting.
thank you.
Okay. So then, let's see, this is a receive and file, so no vote is necessary. Okay, we're just moving on to announcements. I can just announce that this meeting will be rebroadcast on Sunday at 5 p.m. on Channel 20. Any other announcements? Okay, with that, we can adjourn, and we will come back at 1 p.m. on June 20th, 2024. Thanks all.
Thank you.